Hi, my name's Wayne. I'm an artist, apparently. Um, People have told me to stop hiding under a bushel and put my paintings out there for everybody to see. Normally I just sell them on the quiet, but I've decided to go a little bit more public with what I do, as people always ask me about what techniques I use and all that kind of stuff. So here we are. I'm going to show you this painting on my left. I'm going to take you from the beginning steps all the way to when it was finalized, and I really hope you enjoy watching me paint. Hi and welcome to my studio. This is a video of the process that I used in order to produce the painting of the Shroud. Firstly, obviously, I got a young lady in to model for me. And I took a photograph. It's impossible in my process to use a live model throughout. You know, my painting process normally takes 2 to 3 weeks for a painting, and she would have to sit here for 6, 7, 8 hours a day trying to keep the same position, which is impossible. So I generally just photograph. Then I put it onto my computer, and I use a 65-inch computer monitor and display the image onto that. Obviously, it does alter what the colors are and all that kind of stuff, but that's not really important to me. So normally I spend my time just drawing up the very broad outlines of what I'm going to paint, in this case the girl in the sheet. So once I've got those outlines in, then I'll start working in the details of the face. And I always start with the left eye first, working across to the right eye, and taking measurements that are needed, and angles, just by holding my pencil and getting the correct angle against different things, or holding my pencil and taking measurements as though you're drawing from life, and then transcribing onto the canvas. Now, some people do this very roughly and they spend more time on drawing during the painting period, but I found no matter how much you put in or how much you leave out, your drawing experience throughout the painting continues till the cows come home. I spend a lot of time with detailing in the eyes. This helps me down the line when I'm painting, when I'm actually getting the paint in, and I just go crazy, and it tends to work very well. Start with the left, go to the right, shade it all in, and where the areas are too broad to do any shading, I just demarcate the dark areas, the light areas, just with the outline of those areas. As you can see, I've got the face coming together quite nicely. I'm still demarcating the real darks of the drawing. You know, when I say demarcating, putting them in dark. I find when my first stage of actually painting, where you want to get rid of all white in the picture, and you use washes of just blank color across it. In my instance, I always normally use Van Dyke brown on the face and on the body. I found with the graphite of the pencil on the canvas, And I bring that wash over where I've got thick graphite in it. It mixes nicely with the thinned down paint, and it maintains the dark areas quite nicely. So drawing it quite detailed like I'm doing it now does help the process down the line. As you can see, I've got further down with the drawing. I'm moving down to the bottom. I've done a bit of light outlining. At the moment, I'm drawing the sheet around the model. And past experience has taught me, get this right at this stage. I spend time now making sure I got all the folds in the correct places. Yeah, I find if you try to get lazy on this and skimp on the process, um, and you try rectify this at the drawing place, it looks exactly like that. It looks like you've just been trying to make it look like material, and it just doesn't come out right. So I take a lot of care at this stage, or basically the same amount of care as I've taken with her face, to make sure I get every fold in, or demarcated, that I possibly can. And you can see the broad areas there that I haven't bothered shading. I've just put in guidelines. So when I'm painting, I just keep looking at the reference material, and I can see where the shadow areas are supposed to fall, etc. I've now moved down towards the bottom of the canvas, still working very hard on getting the lines correct. I'm talking about the folds now, just getting them all in the right place where the material falls. I've already drawn in the feet, and like the nose, I made a mistake on the nose. I got the angle of the bridge of the nose incorrect, which I was only able to pick up right towards the end of the painting. And in this instance, I've got a heel on her leading foot. Well, her leading foot is way too small. That heel should be a good inch higher than what it is. And I'd only figure that out right at the end of the painting. You get these things that just bother you the whole way through the process. And no matter how many times you look at it, you just can't figure out what's going. And now looking at the reference on the screen behind and looking at my drawing, I can see exactly where I went wrong. But at the time, I just didn't pick it up. But no matter, you work through the process. And as long as you keep observing through the painting process, you will pick up these things and correct them as you go down. Yeah, it's a good close-up now of the work I've done on the pencil side on the face. Now I'm at one of the best parts of painting, the easiest parts of painting. This is the stage where, in the way I work, I just get rid of white. Now, you'll see as I apply paint, how my drawing starts affecting how the paint is applied. Now, at this point, I'm using very thin down paint. So I'm using, I think, just a neat Van Dyke brown at this point. And I've thinned it down basically almost like water. It is so thin. I don't know if you can pick it up in the video, but while I was painting, I could still see my pencil lines underneath the paint. And I spend my time here just basically putting in the dark areas. So my whole process is always working dark to light, dark to light. And I'll repeat that through layer upon layer of painting. So this would be the first step in the painting process. So I'm putting in the darks. And it's a loose phase. If you get it wrong, it's not such a big thing to sort out. In fact, the process I use, if you do make a mistake, it's not so disastrous that the world's going to come to end. It really is just a matter of keeping the process going, and slowly your mistake will disappear, as long as you're aware of it, obviously. So my process now is I'm just working the dark areas up, or loose. I'm not really worried about being accurate. It's just a matter. Let me just get some shape going. Um, well, in this case, direction of the hair, and I just work it up. Um, it's not really that important. I think a little bit more darks in there, and life will be good. Now you can see as I layer over my previous bit down, it gets slowly darker. So just by working layer upon layer, and these are very thin layers that I'm putting on. As I said, it's just a wash, very thin down wash. Now I'm looking at the eyes. What I'm looking at at this early stage of painting is what are the darkest portions of the picture. Okay, where the absolute dark's going to be. Now, if it was a black and white photograph I was working from, for example, I'd be looking at the blacks, and that's what I'm working at now. In the painting now, it is just a brown, Van Dyke brown. But if it was black and white, that would be seen as black. So I just keep working the absolute darks, and I go through the painting slowly doing this process. After putting in the dark areas, now what I'm doing is washing in a thin wash. I think in this instance I've mixed a bit of burnt sienna in with the Van Dyke brown. I've made even a thinner mix than what I used in the hair. And now just working in the shadow areas. And what I'm looking at the moment now is to look at like a cast shadow areas, and I'm looking to create form. So the three-dimensionality of what you are painting, in this instance, obviously the human figure. So again, working the darks first, and then working up to light. So I just slowly apply it, and you can see how the graphite's mixing with the paint I've put in there. You can see that brown's gone quite a lot darker on the left-hand side of the nose than what it was on the left-hand side of the face, because there's more graphite there. And it does help the process. It just saves you having to thin down less and or have thicker paint when you're doing darker areas. And I just keep going with this process. Very thin. There's so much turpentine in that paint at this point in time. But you can see now, look at the bottom of the nose where I've just put the brush over. That graphite's helped me create form. And if you look carefully at the nose, you can see where I went horrendously wrong. That nose is bending towards the left, where it should have been going towards the right. So that whole bridge of the nose was horribly wrong at this stage. So it's just a process now, just keeping putting in the paint. There the graphite's mixing nicely, making it nice and dark. Just a simple process. At this stage, I've basically got all the darks in and I've got rid of all the white in the canvas. You can see in the background I've used a little bit more, I used alizarin red mixed with the Van Dyke brown. I wanted a warmer color in the background that I had in the foreground, so I just whacked it in. And you can see by the brush mark that it's very, very thin. Now I'm going in, this would probably be Van Dyke brown, alizarin red, and Naples yellow light. And what I'm doing is I'm working my midtones now. So we've had the darks in, now I'll start working the midtones. I'm not too worried about light areas at this point. Just keep working up the midtones. As you can see at this stage now, we've gone past just getting rid of white. My paint now is a lot more thicker than what it was at the early stages of the painting, where I was just doing washes. Now I've mixed up what I call like a milk texture. So the paint is thinned down, but it's not even close to what it was like at the beginning. It's thicker, as you could see by the brush mark. And I'm starting at this stage to add a bit of oil to it. I use oil to slow down the drying process. So if I need any blending, it happens quite easily. Just working now, still mid-tone going to light tone. I'm still working up now the lighter area, although it's still, I'd call it not the light tone that you want. But what I'm doing now is I'm still working up the lighter area, doing quite a bit of blending now. This is just to highlight or come out of the darker areas. As I said earlier, I like to work dark, building up to light, then going back to dark, building up to light again. And that process is repeated throughout the painting process. At this point, I haven't changed my palette. I've probably at this stage added a little bit more Naples yellow light, and I'm concentrating on getting the 3D effect. Slowly working up the light areas. Still haven't got it to the lightest tone I want. My darks are probably incorrect now, but it doesn't matter. I'm just looking at modeling. I want the face to take form, and when I've got it to a certain point where I'm happy, then I'll start working and changing the palette and working in color and all that kind of stuff. But at this point, it's purely about getting a basic skin tone in, similar to a base in makeup, and then I'll add to that as I go along. So again, just a very slow process, always working dark to light, and I can't emphasize that enough, how much I do that. So work the dark to light, and then you notice your darks aren't dark enough, so you'll push your darks back, and then you'll figure out, well, no, that's affected the lights, so you work your lights up. As you can see, my paint's getting lighter and lighter through the process. A little bit finer work than the early stages. Now I am really interested in where light is now striking. So, and it's one of the easiest things to really mess up, but you need to get light right, and that creates the form that you need. Once you've got the light right, I think everything else is just really a matter of how you're going to mix your colors and what colors you're going to put where. But slowly now it's starting to take shape, and it looks like just about every bit of paint I apply now is helping the face go in a direction that's making her look more like a face. You'll notice the size of the brush here. This is probably the tiniest brush money can buy. Well, here anyway, where I come from. Normal rule is you try and use the biggest brush that you possibly can for any given area. I'm just working up detail here, so I'm getting to really a small brush. And as I go, to the finer points of the painting, towards the end of the painting, I find I'm using smaller and smaller brushes, because those fine little touches are what makes a painting. As I said, I worked it up to light. Now I'm coming back in with dark. And the color I'm using now would be one of the violets. I can't offhand remember what it is, so it'll be violet mixed with a bit of titanium white and alizarin red to give me the tone that I'm or the hue that I'm getting there now. So I'm working back to the darks. Um, Obviously, after I finish working the darks up, I'll come back in with lights. But you can see every phase that I'm going through, or every stage, that dark light, just keeps improving the modeling of the portrait now. I worked in the darks, now I'm back to the lights. The paint's still wet underneath. And what I've gone now is with a cerulean blue and titanium white. So I'm painting wet on wet at this stage. Small brush. I'm just working on getting the lighter areas in, and the cerulean and the light cerulean blue that I'm applying now mixed together with the paints underneath gives a lovely color that matches skin tone beautifully under the lighting conditions that I've had there. After all the previous work now, I'm starting to bring in color. In this instance, I'm using Winsor Violet, the Winsor Newton range. Just bringing it into little shadow areas, just touching around and seeing where it goes. Well, the background was affecting how I was seeing the painting. As you can see, I'd already worked into the shroud around the model. Um, and the red hue I had in the background was really bothering me. One of the biggest things I learned when painting is don't be precious about what I'm doing. If I don't like what's going on, make the change. You don't try and hold on to it because it's just going to affect the work all the way through. So I said, bugger it, and I got rid of it. And I've come up with this like turquoise. The background's now in. Now that's affected how the shroud is working, so I've had to now go back into it. And as you can see, I've worked the darks. Now I'm back to working up light. And it's a simple formula that I work throughout a painting. Dark, then light, dark, then light. And I keep going backwards and forwards until I get the right tones that I want. Obviously always working with color. At this stage, I'm busy working up the mid-tone of the shroud, or the mid-tone that I feel the shroud should have at this point in time. Again, this is just a simple thin down. At this stage, I'd call it a glaze, but a glaze of an area. Lots of oil at the later stages now, or this is the sort of middle stages of the painting, so I'm using quite a bit of oil mixed in with the paint, which gives it nice flow over the canvas. And also it's transparent. So whatever you've got underneath there, so I've got blues and reds and violets going on underneath what I'm painting now. That all comes through and it modifies the color quite nicely. I was lucky enough to have done a lot of airbrushing, and that teaches you very quickly how color affects color once laid upon each other. So I consider that a bit of an advantage to the game I'm in now, and it does help. Again, I've worked, light to, I mean, dark to light and dark to light, and again, I'm working back my darks. I need them darker against the white to create more contrast, but all simple thin layers. And painting this method, and you don't overdo each stage, it's quite easy to overcome any mistake you've made. You can see the size of brush now when I talk about using the broadest brush possible. And for the area you're working, I'm using quite a wide one there. I wouldn't know what size it is. Um, just having some fun. It's a nice loose process. You'll notice my head turning continually. I never ever stop looking at reference, and I've noticed with a lot of starters and people starting out in art that understanding of observation is just not there, and it's so critical. You continually look at what you're doing, even if you think you've got the drawing correct, like I had with the nose and the heel. Um, I was absolutely sure those were right, and I never worried about them. But you continually look, and you'll start picking up where you've gone wrong, and you can correct those things. Well, here we go again. I've put in the darks, the midtones. Now I'm working in the light areas, so quite thick paint now. I'm able to smush it quite nicely into the darks, but a lot of blending going on because remember I used a lot of oil. Well, there's a lot more oil in the paint now, so it's not drying as quickly. So a lot on wet here, and the blending is quite a lot easier. The problem with this though is in order to keep your color nice, you got to do a lot of washing of your brush. Otherwise you keep picking up what you got underneath and it starts affecting the color that you're putting on now. So in my instance, I'm using a very lighter version of what's below it. But if I keep just applying paint, eventually my lights will become darker. So again, you'll notice I'm looking, every mark you look, make sure you got it right, and then you carry on. Back to the feet again. I've got to get them up to the stage where the faces. I sort of neglected them, enjoying painting the material so much. So now what I'm doing is trying to get them up to the level where the face has been painted. So bringing in color, there's reds going in there, violets going in there, blues. I think there's even some greens in there. But slowly bringing it up. And also I've got to consider that the left-hand foot as we're looking at it is in cast shadow. So I'm going to have to address that. You can see quite strongly now. There's quite a lot of violet going in there in that leg. Oh, you're going to get sick of and tired of me saying the same stuff again, but the dark light thing rears its head again. I've got my darks in. Now I'm working up mid-tones, so I'm putting in these lighter marks now. The form of the foot and how it's working in perspective will start coming together. So I'm adding basically a very mid-tone color now, and slowly this will pick up the feet and make them work in space. I needed to warm up the shadow areas of the shroud. Um, so I applied a limited area glaze, if you want to call it that again, which was in this instance just pure alizarin red um, mixed with linseed oil and turpentine. And this gives me a nice form of glazing, and I can bring it into the picture quite quickly, even though it's on top of dry now. it allows me to really blend nicely with what's going on underneath. I've done the darks and midtones on the shroud. Now I'm working up the light areas now. So you'll notice another small brush now coming in because a little bit of detail I've got to work on here. Forgive the smoking. I'm a bad smoker, but it's not my smoking you're worried about. It's how I paint. And you can see it's just very carefully now. You can see the time taken over each area is a lot longer than the early stages of the painting, and there's a lot more observation going on from the reference. So I'm basically making a couple marks, looking back at the reference, then making some more marks. So it's a very much slower process. At the beginning of the painting, it's very quick, and you think like you're steaming ahead and you're going to finish in a couple of days. It's the later stages where I'm at now that the whole process slows down. Um, Very easy to get to this section of the painting, but to take this from here to a finished piece, that's where the real work begins. This section is just to give you a very quick idea what work's been done at this point in time, and where we're up to in the process before going ahead. So you can see it's quite down the line, but I would still call this very much underpainting. Now we're getting into the serious parts of the painting, or what I call the serious bits. We start working back the darks again. I'm using a lot of violets, reds, greens, blues, but what I'll be doing now is working up the darks again, then working up the lights again, and starting to use a lot more color than what I would have used at the early stages now. So this is starting to work up the color. You also notice something else. I work around the picture, or around the face in this instance, all the time, from one area to the next, comparing midtones, comparing color, hue, how light forms, how it changes the tone of or the color of the skin, where the skin looks softer, where it's harder. So I'm just adding color continually and modifying it. Again, this process now is wet on wet, basically all paint and oil now, no terps at this point. You can see now I'm using, and if I'm not mistaken, I was using a cadmium red at this point, bringing it into the face. I wanted to warm up the shadow areas quite substantially. One of the things people say, if you use a lot of white, which I do, they say your painting will look chalky. Now, in some instances that's true. I don't believe it. I always believe that if you keep your shadow areas either warm or cold, make sure your light areas are the opposite. So if your shadow areas are cool color, make your light areas a warm color, and that will stop the chalky effect that happens in a painting that looks chalky. Generally, if you look at those paintings, you generally find people have stopped worrying about warm and cool colors, and that's where it goes. As you can see there, I'm putting quite a lot of red into the picture now. Just looking at the forehead now, looking at more detail. There's a little wrinkle going across the girl's forehead. That's working up. The colors are getting a lot stronger at this stage of the painting. Just prior to this clip, I'd finally figured out I'd done something wrong with the nose. And I've now corrected the angle of the bridge of the nose. And I also realized that I had the nose too long and was too close to the mouth. So I've also corrected that, but I've still got to get the nostril in and all that kind of stuff. So I finally saw where I'd gone wrong, and I've corrected it. Well, I'm finally getting to the hair, which I've neglected, avoided. So finally get to that point. Again, working dark, then going up to light. Back at the face again, still working up color, slowly bringing it up to where I want it to be. So same process again, darks, work up the darks, then work up the lights. Um, all the time looking at the reference, making sure I'm getting each mark to do what I want it to do. After spending time on the model's face, um, and I started looking at the shroud and realized that I needed to get more definition into it to get the lighting correct. So here I'm adding um, the shadow areas, just darkening them up quite gently, also with a glaze into the areas as opposed to glaze over the whole thing. In this clip, I've decided that I needed to warm up the shadows. They were getting a bit on the cool side, so I've come in again with the red, and I'm working into the shadow areas. Now that I've worked up the dark and midtones of the shroud, I now need to work back, work the lights back up again. So although it looks white, this isn't white. It's titanium white with cerulean blue in it, um, and there's a few other colors mixed into that to get the tone that I wanted. Um, but now that my shadows are warm, the cool highlights really pronounce them and bring them forward. At the final stages now, now putting in the detail and just sorting out those little things that bugged you all the way through the painting. So just the little things now that complete the picture. Well, that's what you've been watching for the last couple minutes, is the process of producing this picture. Well, here it is in all its glory. Just giving you a nice good close-up on what it looks like all the way down. So that's the finished signed product, and while I'm at it, here's the rest of the studio, all the different paintings I've been busy with. There's some hidden behind there. There's my reference portion, my monitor for that, music, and my fish tanks. And that one up there I put on Instagram just for fun, and the amount of likes I had for it was just crazy. And all it is me cleaning my palette with my palette knife and wiping it on an old canvas. But people seem to like that kind of stuff. And that is my studio together with the finished piece. Thanks for watching. I hope you watch the next video I'm going to produce with the following painting. Cheers.